I never imagined my wedding day would look like a meeting between two civilizations. The reception hall floated above the crystal lakes of Arion Prime, illuminated by thousands of glowing alien flowers that changed color according to the emotions of nearby guests. Humans loved them because they were beautiful. The aliens loved them because they were practical. If someone was angry, the flowers turned red. If someone was happy, they turned gold. If someone was drunk, they apparently turned purple. By the time the reception started, nearly half the room was glowing purple. I stood near the center of the hall, staring at my bride and wondering how I had gotten so lucky. She was breathtaking. Her silver eyes reflected the lights above us, and her smile somehow managed to calm every nervous thought in my head. 3 years earlier, we had met during a diplomatic exchange program between Earth and her homeworld. Everyone expected cultural misunderstandings and political headaches. Instead, we fell in love. Now our wedding had become a historic event. Human officials, alien nobles, military officers, merchants, and family members from both worlds filled the hall. It was supposed to symbolize unity between species. Which was exactly why I was worried about my brother. My younger brother had spent his entire life turning important moments into comedy disasters. At my high school graduation, he had secretly replaced my speech with a grocery list. At my birthday party, he convinced everyone that I had joined a professional llama racing league. At our cousin's wedding, he released harmless holographic chickens during the first dance. Nobody ever forgot anything he did. Especially the victims. Unfortunately, I was usually the victim. That was why I didn't trust his sudden transformation into a responsible adult. All week he had been suspiciously helpful. Too helpful. He helped decorate the venue. He helped organize seating arrangements. He even helped elderly alien relatives find their assigned tables. It was unnatural. People like my brother didn't suddenly become mature. They became creative. I know that look, my bride said beside me. I sighed. He's planning something. She glanced across the room. My brother was standing near the drinks table, smiling like a man who had just hidden fireworks inside a birthday cake. Definitely planning something, she agreed. A few minutes later he approached us carrying 2 glasses. For the happy couple. I narrowed my eyes. What did you do? He looked offended. You wound me. Answer the question. I did absolutely nothing. That answer worried me more than any confession could have. Still, he handed me a drink and walked away before I could investigate further. My bride watched him leave. Your brother looks nervous. Good. He should be. The celebration continued. Music filled the hall. Human guests attempted alien dances. Alien guests attempted human dances. Both groups failed spectacularly. Laughter echoed everywhere. For the first time all day, I relaxed. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe my brother had actually grown up. Maybe he truly wanted my wedding day to be perfect. Then I noticed him staring at me from across the room. He looked excited. Very excited. The kind of excited he usually looked right before something exploded. I took a sip from my glass. My brother grinned. My bride raised an eyebrow. And suddenly I felt strange. Not sick. Not dizzy. Just different. As if a door inside my mind had quietly unlocked. The master of ceremonies called my name and announced it was time for my wedding speech. Guests turned toward me. Family members smiled. My bride squeezed my hand. Across the room, my brother folded his arms and waited eagerly. Whatever prank he thought he had planned, he clearly expected it to be hilarious. I walked toward the stage with my drink in hand. At first everything felt normal. Then I opened my mouth to begin speaking. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had completely lost the ability to keep my thoughts to myself. I stepped onto the stage, smiled at the crowd, and raised my glass. Thank you all for coming today. The guests applauded politely. So far, everything was normal. My beautiful wife looks absolutely incredible tonight. More applause followed. My bride smiled warmly. Then something strange happened. The next thought that entered my head immediately came out of my mouth. Also, the DJ's royal accent is completely fake. The room went silent. The DJ froze. I froze. Everyone froze. Why had I said that? The DJ nervously adjusted his headset. I tried to continue. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, it's wonderful having everyone here. Especially our DJ, who has spent 6 hours pretending he grew up in the Galactic Royal Court even though he clearly sounds like he's from a mining colony. The DJ stared at me. A few guests started laughing. Then one of the alien waiters shouted, I knew it! The DJ sighed dramatically. Fine. Fine. I grew up on a mining asteroid. The entire room exploded with laughter. I wanted to stop talking. I really did. Unfortunately, my mouth had apparently declared independence. I looked toward another table. Oh look, there's my wife's ex-boyfriend. Every head turned. The poor guy nearly dropped his drink. He spends so much time trying to look mysterious that nobody notices he actually looks confused 90% of the time. The ex immediately opened his mouth. What? Why would you say? He paused. Wait, what were we talking about? The room erupted again. Even my bride laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. The ex slowly sat back down. Okay, that's fair. I could see my brother across the room. His confident grin was beginning to disappear. Meanwhile, I was apparently becoming a guided missile aimed directly at everyone's secrets. I pointed toward an elderly woman sitting near the dance floor. My grandmother has a gambling problem. Gasps filled the room. Grandma slammed her hands on the table. It's not a problem if you're winning. The crowd burst into hysterics. She stood proudly. I made 30,000 credits betting on lunar sandworm races last month. Several alien guests immediately pulled out notepads. Which sandworms? One asked. Within seconds, Grandma was explaining betting strategies to half the room. At this point, people weren't even trying to hide their laughter. The glowing flowers decorating the hall had turned bright gold from all the happiness. I desperately tried to steer my speech back toward romance. I love my wife more than anything. That part was true. The audience gave an appreciative. Ah. She's smart, kind, beautiful, and significantly better at managing finances than I am. More laughter. She also knows where all my emergency snack stashes are. My bride nodded. Every single one. The crowd cheered. Then the strangest thing happened. People started confessing things voluntarily. An alien ambassador stood up. I don't understand half the diplomatic reports I approve. A human senator raised his hand. Neither do we. More laughter. A wealthy merchant admitted he couldn't operate his own communication tablet. A retired military officer admitted he got lost inside his own house twice a week. One confession triggered another. The entire reception transformed into an honesty festival. Guests laughed harder with every revelation. Old embarrassments suddenly became funny stories. People who had spent years pretending to be perfect were finally relaxing. Across the room, my brother looked absolutely horrified. His eyes widened as he realized his harmless prank had somehow infected the entire wedding. He had expected a few embarrassing childhood stories. Instead, he had accidentally created the most honest social gathering in human and alien history. And things were only getting started. Because every time I looked at someone, another truth immediately popped into my head. And I had absolutely no ability to keep it to myself. At some point, the wedding reception stopped feeling like a formal event and started feeling like the most entertaining therapy session in the galaxy. Nobody was hiding anything anymore. The strange wave of honesty had spread through the entire hall. Human guests were admitting embarrassing mistakes. Alien guests were revealing misunderstandings they had carried for years. And somehow, instead of creating fights, everyone was laughing. One elderly alien noble stood and pointed toward his brother. I had not spoken to him properly in 15 years. The room became quiet. Then the noble continued. Because he borrowed my star yacht and returned it with scratches. His brother blinked. That was not me. What? It was your son! The noble slowly turned toward his son. The son immediately raised both hands. In my defense, I was young and stupid. The noble stared for several seconds. Then he started laughing. I spent 15 years angry at the wrong person? The entire family burst into laughter. Moments later they were hugging. Another family dispute vanished. Meanwhile, my own relatives weren't doing much better. My uncle suddenly stood. I would like to confess something. The room looked at him. The famous family argument from 10 years ago was my fault. Several relatives gasped. You said Grandpa insulted your cooking. I know. He didn't? No. I misheard him. The room fell silent. You started a 10-year feud because you misheard one sentence? My uncle nodded. A second later everyone was laughing so hard that some guests nearly fell from their chairs. Years of tension disappeared in an instant. Even I couldn't stop laughing. The flowers around the hall glowed bright gold. Then my attention shifted toward my bride's parents. Her father and mother exchanged nervous glances before standing together. That immediately caught everyone's attention. They were respected figures on their world. When they spoke, people listened. Her father cleared his throat. There is something we should admit. My bride smiled knowingly. Her mother sighed. When our daughter first told us she loved a human, we were concerned. A few guests nodded. Her father continued. We believed humans were impulsive. I immediately spoke before thinking. We are. Laughter echoed through the room. We believed humans were reckless. Also true. More laughter. We believed humans made decisions based on emotion instead of logic. I nodded. Absolutely. The crowd laughed again. Then the room became quieter. Because despite the truth serum, the next words came directly from my heart. Humans are messy. I looked around the hall. We make mistakes. Several human guests raised their drinks. We do embarrassing things. More agreement followed. We panic. We overreact. We say the wrong thing. My brother quietly looked away. But when we love someone, nothing can stop us. The room became silent. I looked at my bride. When I met her, she came from another world. She smiled softly. Different culture. Different species. Different everything. I squeezed her hand. And none of that mattered. Several guests nodded. Because humans have a strange habit. I laughed. When we care about someone, we'll cross oceans, planets, and entire star systems to stay with them. The alien guests listened carefully. Many looked genuinely moved. Then my bride stood beside me. The room immediately focused on her. I would like to confess something too. She smiled. When I first met him, I thought he was ridiculous. The crowd laughed. I was. You absolutely were. Even more laughter followed. She stepped closer. But I discovered something remarkable about humans. Her silver eyes scanned the room. They can find hope during disasters. She pointed toward the chaotic reception. They can laugh when everything goes wrong. Guests chuckled. And somehow they can transform mistakes into opportunities. Many alien relatives nodded thoughtfully. I fell in love with that. The room erupted into applause. For the first time all evening, I noticed my brother wasn't laughing. He looked guilty. Very guilty. His eyes kept moving between me and the drink table. Then realization struck. The strange honesty. The timing. His behavior. Everything suddenly made sense. I slowly turned toward him. His face turned pale. The crowd followed my gaze. My brother swallowed hard. And in that moment, everyone realized exactly who had started this entire disaster. The room became silent. People waited for me to react. My brother looked like a man preparing for execution. But as I stared at him, I found myself smiling instead. The silence lasted only a few seconds. My brother slowly stood from his chair. For the first time in his life, he looked completely defeated. This was a man who once convinced an entire neighborhood that our father had secretly become a professional wrestler. Confidence was normally his natural state. Not tonight. Tonight he looked terrified. "I can explain," he said weakly. The crowd immediately laughed. "That is never a good opening sentence," someone shouted. More laughter followed. My brother rubbed the back of his neck. "Okay. Fine. I may have put something in your drink." Gasps spread through the hall. My wife folded her arms. "I knew it." "You knew? You were acting suspicious before the ceremony." My brother groaned. "I thought it was a harmless truth serum." The entire room stared at him. "You thought what?" Several people shouted at once. His face turned red. "I only wanted him to tell a few embarrassing childhood stories." He pointed toward me. "I thought he'd talk about the time he got trapped in a laundry machine." The crowd immediately turned toward me. Unfortunately, the truth serum was apparently still active. I was 7 and trying to prove physics was optional. The room exploded with laughter. My brother sighed. "See? That's all I wanted." Instead, he gestured toward the room. "We somehow ended up solving decades of family problems." Everyone looked around. He wasn't wrong. The Noble brothers who hadn't spoken in 15 years were currently sharing drinks together. My uncle was apologizing to relatives he had argued with for a decade. Alien and human guests who had arrived as strangers were laughing together like old friends. Even my grandmother had somehow recruited 6 new members into her illegal racing club. One of the alien nobles was already discussing betting strategies with her. The flowers throughout the reception hall glowed brighter than ever. I looked around the room. Then I looked at my brother. Everyone expected me to be angry. Honestly, under normal circumstances, I probably would have been. But tonight wasn't normal. Tonight had become something special. I smiled. "You know what's funny?" My brother looked confused. "What?" "This is probably the best prank you've ever pulled." His jaw dropped. "What?" The guests laughed. I stepped forward. "Look around." He did. For the first time, he really saw what had happened. Nobody was fighting. Nobody was pretending. Nobody was hiding behind pride, fear, or old misunderstandings. People were simply being themselves. The room had never felt more alive. My wife squeezed my hand. "He accidentally united 2 families. 2 species," I corrected. The alien guests applauded. Her father stood. "I must agree." Several other guests nodded. A military commander raised his glass. "This has been the most productive diplomatic gathering I've ever attended." A human ambassador laughed. "Same." The fake accent DJ approached the stage. Without his artificial voice, he sounded much more relaxed. "I'd also like to thank the groom." I blinked. "For what?" "For exposing me." The crowd laughed. He shrugged. "Honestly, pretending to be someone else was exhausting." More applause followed. Then my wife's ex-boyfriend stood. "I would also like to thank everyone." The room became quiet. He smiled awkwardly. "I spent years trying to appear mysterious." Someone shouted. "You looked confused." The crowd erupted again. The ex laughed with them. For the first time, I think I'm okay admitting that. Even he looked happier. That was when I finally understood something. Humans were strange. We always had been. We made mistakes constantly. We created disasters out of simple situations. We stumbled through life with questionable plans and even worse judgment. Yet somehow, we kept turning failures into victories. We turned accidents into discoveries. We turned problems into opportunities. And apparently, we could even turn a terrible wedding prank into a celebration that brought entire worlds together. The alien guests seemed fascinated by the idea. Several were already discussing whether human chaos should be officially studied. Honestly, it probably should. My brother finally walked toward me. "I'm sorry." I pulled him into a hug. "I know. I really didn't mean for this to happen." "I know that too." The room applauded. Then I leaned closer and lowered my voice. "Just remember one thing." His eyes widened. "What?" Revenge is coming. The crowd immediately burst into laughter. My brother's face went pale. Wait, what? I smiled. Maybe not today. The guests laughed harder. Maybe not tomorrow. My brother looked horrified. But someday. The entire hall erupted with cheers. The music started again. Humans and aliens returned to the dance floor. Families celebrated together. Old arguments disappeared. New friendships formed. And as I danced with the woman I loved beneath a sky filled with stars from two different worlds, I realized something incredible. My brother had tried to embarrass me. Instead, he had accidentally given everyone the greatest wedding gift imaginable. A little honesty. A lot of laughter. And proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't perfection. It was our unbelievable ability to turn complete chaos into something wonderful.